right, so let's go through the example. So I have as a side project, a pickleball paddle company. It's called Dinky. And let's say I want to create a promotional email to sell one of my specific products. That's going to be the example that we work through today. Um, all of the information about the product is already on this page. And so the beautiful thing about working with some of these assistants is I don't need to copy and paste and make sure that I'm moving content constantly between where it exists somewhere on the web and the assistant. So I'm just going to grab this link, and in my prompt, I've done two things. I grabbed the image of my paddle and I put it in here. I probably didn't need to do that because it was on the page and the assistant would have been able to find it and use it. But I don't know why. This is probably more psychological than anything else. I feel like I get better results when I'm asking for a visual thing and I include screenshots of that thing. So when I'm asking in previous episodes, we talked about building stuff based on a website. I'll almost always take a screenshot of the website so the LLM, the model, can see, quote unquote, what the thing is I'm talking about and not just have to interpret it from the code on the page, which is what it's looking at. So I dropped in the paddle image, but otherwise my prompt is going to be really lightweight. I'm going to say create a promotional email based on, oh shoot, I even misspelled this prompt. It's very forgiving. On promoting this paddle, and then I just included a link to that paddle. It should be visually attractive, highlight the benefits of the paddle, and prompt people to buy. And I've learned my lesson from previous past at this. I already ran this, and I'm going to show you what I got back.
We're not going to watch it bake?
Yeah, we will. Don't worry. There will be plenty of sitting through loading screens later on. So what it did is kind of neat. The first thing that it did is it gave me a text email or just wrote out the sale, really, how I was thinking about selling this product. And then it created the first version of this email, which, like, look at this. This is not bad. Like, it knew everything about the paddle. It's called the Sunrise. It put the image in there. It creates a great little value proposition, tells the story of the paddle. It's based on the sunrise in Wildwood, New Jersey, where I go in the summer. And then it says it's not just a pretty paddle. Here is the value proposition. Here are the specs on it. And it lays it out. And then there it is right there. Discounted price, a button to purchase. That's pretty great.
That's pretty awesome. You know? I mean, like, that's usable.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know it gets better, but like that's pretty solid as a first, like, one-shot output.
Yeah, especially from this vague prompt. Yeah. The real benefit here is it was able to look at my page, and the page is where I had put the information about the paddle that it was able to turn into that artifact.
Yeah.
When you hear me say artifact, that is, I'm referring to things, and Jesse, when we use that word, we're referring to objects that an assistant or a model might create for you, like an email or a page or whatever. So that's just step one, folks. But if you wanted to, that's where you could start in creating a promotional email for yourself. Grab a link to one of your products or your services, which is really cool online, and just ask it to write visually appealing. How exactly did I say that? Visually attractive, highlight the benefits of it, and prompt people to buy. So how it should look, what it should focus on, and what the goal of it is.
Yeah, and we had I think it was last episode a bunch of people talking about coaching services, talking about an Etsy shop where they make jewelry. Like, grab one of those products or grab one of your coaching service pages and just drop it in and see what it can do. It will be, you won't be upset.
Yes. So I decided to push this further. I wanted, like, the point of this whole show is like, what would
be a short demo if you didn't.
Yeah, for sure, but awesome, honestly. So like, I asked it for two things in one here. I wanted it to include my dinky.com branding and make the email less generic. That's like a vague prompt, but I wanted to see what it did. And I asked it to generate an image. I did two things right there. And here's where some of these general purpose models, we start to see the holes in them that require us to be more specific and take additional at-bats. Because all it did was create the image. it didn't update the artifact. So it made this image, which critique the image however you like. Like this arm looks really weird. That's like a crazy way to hold the paddle. I get that they're trying to show off the paddle.
It's definitely going to lose.
Yeah. But it made the image. I could have spent more time iterating on the image if I wanted to. I didn't want to right now, but it didn't update the email. So I had to ask again for it to expand on the email and use the image. And it did part of that. But here you can see another limitation of some of these assistants. It did, I will say, I thought what it did to the look of the email was great. Like it looks beautiful. It really called it out. It has 2 calls to action now to purchase. There's this button here where it tells the story of the paddle. And then after going through the specs and the technical benefits, it gives you another button to purchase. But ChatGPT has an issue where if you're referring to a local image that it's created, or even sometimes, in this case, I think I might have, no, here I just asked it to use that image. It will sometimes not know how to appropriately link to that image if it's not hosted somewhere. So the reason it was able to use my paddle image is, I think, and I could go look at the code, that it actually just used the image hosted from my site. Mm-hmm. And here, it generated an image and is having trouble slugging it into the email. It's not the end of the world, but it's one of those annoying things that happens when you try to use a general purpose tool like ChatGPT or Claude to do a specific thing like make an email.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, is like, if aside from the image creation, if I had that hosted on my site, I could say, insert this image with a URL where that image is hosted, and it'll probably do a better job. Yeah, it just doesn't know how to take what it created and go host it somewhere and insert it for you, right?
Yes, which is a pain in the moment, but really again, not the end of the world, you know?
No, not the end of the world, but like, okay, there's a gap.
Yeah. So then I went back and forth with it a couple times trying to get it to add the image to the email. And then eventually I was like, you just can't do this enough. Enough of this. And I moved on to the next thing, which is I had an email that I was pretty happy with, and I wanted to get it into my email marketing tool, which in my case is AWeber. And the awesome thing about AWeber is that we have a direct connector in ChatGPT. So you can just go to ChatGPT's marketplace. I knew I should have had this up, but here you go. You can just go to ChatGPT's marketplace, search for AWeber under apps, and then there'll be a button here that lets you connect it. You can connect it to your account. And then once it's connected to your account, you can just ask things about it in chat. So like down here, you can see that I have AWeber added. You don't normally have to add the app you want to talk to. I just like to do that to make sure that it will work. But to add that to the conversation, I hit the plus button, go to more, and then go to AWeber. And then you can see that my prompt was add this email to my list for testing. That's the name of the list in AWeber. And then it goes through, it calls information about my lists, and then it creates the message. It's as simple as that, which is awesome. And then I can see in AWeber that email. So this is the final email that it put together. Looks really great. You see that it didn't pull the image over, but don't worry about that. But here it is. The HTML email is in my AWeber account, ready to send.
But like, think about, like, even if you have the skill set, like the time that it would have taken to design that, even just like the ideation of it. And then like, if you don't have the skill set, like the email developer, I mean, the speed to this result is just crazy. And the fact that you're looking at it in your ESP right now,
yes,
where you're essentially ready to send.
Yes. There are some caveats, but we're going to get to that in a second. So I'm showing you this in AWeber's alpha, like closed alpha version of our message editor. So if you were to create this with AWeber right now and open it in AWeber, you would see it in an HTML editor where to make changes, you have to edit the code. You'd see something like this. And then you'd see a preview of it on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. This is going to be releasing in beta very soon. So you'll be able to interact with AWeber very similarly to the ways that you would in ChatGPT or Claude, but it's designed specifically to make emails. So you don't have to worry about the things like uploading an image to a certain place and hosting it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But while we're waiting, I'm just going to ask it to replace the hero section with this image.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of what's coming with this builder is it's not a generalist the way ChatGPT or Claude are. It knows the ins and outs of building emails and designing emails, and it's just that much better result.
Yeah, because like the specific example I was talking about was like hosting images. Like that is annoying, but it doesn't seem like necessarily a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
But see, yeah, so that did it. I'm in edit view. For some reason, the preview wasn't updating, but it did it. That image is now there, and this email looks freaking great. It looks so good. But here's where we need to talk about another pitfall of generic tools like ChatGPT and Claude. And that is that if you've ever tried to design an email yourself, you know that different inbox clients like Outlook and Gmail and Yahoo, they render your email differently. So your email actually looks different in these inboxes because they have different ways of interpreting the code. And ChatGPT and Claude, from my testing, if you just ask them for to create emails for you, email markup for you, they do a good job in the browser. So I'm looking at it in the preview. But if I send it to an inbox, specific inboxes, mostly the older Outlooks, which a lot of people, especially in corporate environments, use, the email breaks in ways that feel really bad, that don't feel acceptable to me as a designer and someone who cares about my business. And in some cases, it'll even break in Gmail. And that's just a limitation of some of these generalist tools. So I want to show you a way that you can work around that for now. But I also want to use that as an opportunity to talk about these specific tools. So like we have our email builder. There are other tools for building emails with AI that also recognize this. But we have tools in place in our builder to make sure that when you're creating content, it understands the limitations of inboxes, and it builds code that is compliant with those inboxes. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but this is a very unsophisticated look at some of the things that you have to deal with. And like behind the scenes in our builder, we deal with a lot more than this. But this is, I'm basically asking it to create me a promotional email using the image it created for me and an image of the paddle. And the only big difference is, other than asking to include the hero image, is I include a list of things that it needs to check for email compliance. And we don't need to go through all of these things, but I want to make sure that it doesn't have click here buttons. I want to make sure that it's not using code attributes that certain inbox clients can't understand or can't render. I want to make sure that it has attributes set for accessibility. So if somebody with a visual impairment or who uses assistant tools for interacting with their computer, if they open my email, they get the same benefit out of it that any other person would get. So that's what this whole thing is. And as an incentive for you to sign up for the newsletter, we're going to send an email with this base prompt to the list. I don't know, today or tomorrow, sometime by Monday, we'll send that email with this prompt that you can use, that you can build off for yourself, including that simple checklist. Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's see what this made for me. All right, so that gave me a pretty nice looking email. I like the look of the other one, but let's not quibble about the look because it's really easy to update the look. I could just ask for changes to it and it would, both the look and the content. I do like the way it broke out these individual sections. I thought this was pretty cool. The language it's using here. It talks about the two styles of play and why it's a good all-around paddle. That if you haven't played pickleball, that probably doesn't seem cool. But if you play the game, it's like, oh wow, that's kind of neat.
That's like pretty next level informative. You know, like it's not for the beginner surface level. I love that. I love the like pattern interrupts too. I agree with you. Like maybe you adjust some colors, but I love that it like just a good email best practice when you have a lot of content. using visual pattern interrupts to kind of refocuses the viewer. They realize, their brain realizes like, oh, something shifted here. So they're re-engaging with the content again and not, glossing over it. It's a really good practical use of it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you, man. And then like I got to the point pretty quickly with this where I was happy with it. Yeah, I asked it to encode the image locally, but you can see that it has trouble with that. Like, I don't know if you can see the image quality in the stream, but this image is degraded and it's not full width. So doesn't look great, but I asked it to add it to my AWeber account, and here it is. It's in AWeber, able for me to edit, change. Like if I wanted to here, I could do the same thing I did in the other one and say, update the hero image with this image, with the attached image. And I'm going to try something else too. Update the color scheme of the email to harmonize with the hero image. See what it does. I love testing this stuff live because
we promised there would be some live baking, right?
Yeah, because you never know what it's going to do, which is really fun and interesting.
I think what's so cool about like whether you're doing this in ChatGPT or Claude or in an ESP that has this capability like AWeber, it's just such a giant pattern shift in the way that you work. Where like, and I know that could be stated 1,000 times with everything that's happening with AI, but again, it's just one of those things where I remember whether you're like talking about like website builders or email like ESP providers, like it was always about like who has the like best templates, like which templates look the best with. I'm not saying that templates are irrelevant, but they're kind of irrelevant because when you work from like this way, like there's no limitation to what you want to make. If you can envision it and describe it, it'll put it together for you. Template be damned, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just an incredible shift. It opens the doors for everything.
It is really awesome. And that actually points to another reason why purpose-built tools are really useful, actually. Because sometimes it feels like, why would I ever use anything other than ChatGPT and Claude, But I think we've shown over the last couple of weeks why purpose-built tools can be much better. So like was it just Tuesday that we went through the process of the video stuff, or was it?
We did the free video AI video tools. Yeah.
So like that, we showed you the differences between 3 purpose-built tools, and the fact that like what you can do in them is different and really pretty impressive because they're built to give you one thing, which is great video output. And in the case of an email builder, like we're showing here, the purpose of it is to give you email content and to understand how people work with email, because you can ask it to create a new template for you every time if you wanted to, but that's generally not how brands work and how email marketing works. So the awesome thing about tools like ours is you can also ask it to just use a consistent template and fill in the content. So Jesse and I were kicking around the welcome message for the shift. And we have a template that we've been using for as we've been testing out the newsletter, and it's big and it has all these sections. And we didn't want the welcome message to have all those sections, but we wanted to have the same look and feel. So all we did is we came up with the content and we were like, hey, make this content work in this template. And it did. It was awesome. It like reused appropriate styles for different things. You'll be able to see it yourself pretty soon. But that was really really kind of incredible, that experience of I have this thing that has incredibly different content than the content I want in it. And just to be able to say, put this content into this wrapper, and it figured out how to make it all work and feel harmonious.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like you're not starting at the beginning each and every time when you're using a purpose-built tool that can retain that kind of information.
Yeah. So that is the process. I was hoping we could spend a little time, Jesse and I are both designers at heart, kind of banging on this email, that this is a similar process that you could use in ChatGPT or Claude, but just like go through the process of making some conversational changes and see what we get back.
Yeah.
Anything that you would change right off the bat?
That white background behind the logo and the header is I'm losing the logo and it's just not doing it. It's not working. It's not doing any work.
Yeah.
So I don't know, looking at your color palette, maybe a dark header.
Really dark gray. Let's say that. Bang. That's one. What else might we want to do?
The paddle's probably taken up, like we've shown it in action, right? In that really nice full width image. I'd probably make the paddle like an inset, like a 2-column maybe, where it's paddle and the information. It doesn't need that much vertical space, especially I'm thinking about somebody viewing this on mobile, just how much vertical space that's taking.
Okay, let's do a smaller image of the paddle on the left, and the price and buy button on the right. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll kick those two off. Yeah. While we're waiting for that to get done, let's see what else might we want to change. I kind of like a lot of
I wouldn't touch the why you'll love it section. I really like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I thought it did a good job in general with the colors of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty nice.
Well, they're more derived from the paddle and by way of that, the image that it created, than the ChatGPT version.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, that was pretty fast. Move that. And I mean, there's stuff that I would probably tweak about this, like
some
mess with the alignment of it.
Right? Sure.
Yeah. That actually.
How's the header look?
Oh, good. Good question. I'm just gonna say make those columns equal width, and this will hopefully. Oh, that looks great.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, this will hopefully demonstrate that it understands the context of what I'm saying. This is kind of neat. You can see the thinking of what it's figuring out as it kind of figures out its approach. Mm-hmm. And this is a really helpful as you're trying to use these tools. I would say when you can do it in both cases, when a model does something that you either really liked or really didn't like, try and look into the thinking. It'll show you like what is it doing, and then that stuff that you could say, like if it did something wrong, you can look at its chain of thought, see where it made that decision, and give it another thing. It's like, oh, I saw that this is what you thought you should do this instead. And just going through that exercise also trains you to better understand how these models work.
A couple of quick questions. Miss J asked a little bit ago, and I think it was when you were talking about the ChatGPT with the AWeber app in ChatGPT. She asked if that was global. I'm assuming like globally available.
Well, the AWeber chat in ChatGPT is available to all users on any plan. And the way that it works is when you set it up, you have to authenticate it against one of your AWeber accounts, because you can have multiple AWeber accounts, and then it will work for any list on that account. So I have like a couple dozen lists on my account, and now I can ask it for subscriber details. I can ask it to create content. I can ask for information about the list for any of the lists on that account.
Yeah. And then we just had a question. Is this in Claude? No, this is actually in soon to be released email builder from AWeber, which is an email marketing platform or email service provider that actually Chris and I both work for. And Chris has been obviously, like, he's our chief product officer. He's been intimately involved in the creation of this with the team, along with some other builders that we're going to show soon.
That is a great question, though. Like, or it points to a great question of how would you use it in Claude. I'm going to run that same prompt in Claude with my hero image and my paddle image and see what it comes up with. But the nice thing about connectors like AWeber's is you can use them in Claude as well as ChatGPT. So in Claude, it takes a little bit more work because you have to set up a custom connector with AWeber's MCP, which, Jesse, if you wouldn't mind dropping a link to that knowledge base article into the YouTube chat, it's not hard at all. And anyone can do that as well. But then once you have that set up, you can do the same thing. You can have Claude create an email for you. You can edit it back and forth conversationally in Claude. And then when you're ready to send it through your email marketing platform, you can just add that connector. Like if I go down here and I have AWeber as a connector. So I have that on. Oops, no, I want that on. And make sure that's on. And then I could just say, add this to a list for testing or whatever your list name is in AWeber, and it would add it. Or if you use another email marketing platform, as long as they have an MCP, which many of them don't yet, you could have them add it and then send it from your email marketing platform. So this is very bad. Why did you do such a bad job, Claude?
And just as a reminder, like if you are just jumping in and joining, or just as a reminder, you gave the same prompt to ChatGPT and the same prompt to Claude and the same prompt to the AWeber builder, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think this is, again, an issue with not understanding what to do with the images that were provided to it. So what I'm going to try is add. Actually, you know what? Let's just debug this live. So what I would say is I can't see any of the images in the artifact. They're showing as broken image links. We'll just see what Claude does with that. This is actually another principle that we talk about all the time. Well, thank you for nothing, Claude. But when you don't get what you expect, don't just give up. Don't just say it was a failure. Iterate. Just like if you were working on an idea yourself and you bump into a roadblock, I mean, sometimes we give up, but if you really care about getting it done, then you ask a question. You go online and search for an answer to a question. Or if you're working with someone else and they do some work that is subpar, that doesn't meet your expectations, you give them more context about what you need from them and what the issue was.
Well, and again, you don't need to understand. You don't need to understand why something's not working. You just need to be able to describe what's not working and ask it to investigate. To try and figure out why.
Yeah. So I want to go to a quick audience engagement, and then we'll move on to the mailbag shortly after. But as you're watching this, please come up with an idea here. What's a change, no matter how off the wall you think it is, that you would make to this email? Would you change an image? Would you change colors? Would you ask for new information? Leave a comment in the chat, and we'll make that change live. I'm going to try something while we're waiting. That for the tons of comments that I'm sure are going to come in, but I'm going to do some more image generation. I'm going to say update the image of the paddle with a version that has let's say regenerate the image of the paddle with a version that has a beautiful background that really highlights the look of the paddle. I'm not going to be more specific than that, but we'll kick that off. You can see that it's thinking through, understanding what my ask was. I've asked for an image with an attractive background.
There you go. Make the price black to show up better.
Okay, we'll do that.
Good call out.
Show up better. This is something you could also change directly in the editor if you want, but we're going to do this all conversationally for the heck of it today.
But worth pointing out, because you and I have talked about this before. There are some editors like this. Like Level was no longer. Well, actually, Level was in the middle. But some of these, like, you can conversationally make changes, and that's such a powerful, beautiful thing when it's like more complex. Sometimes you want to change a bit of text or price, and with some of these editors, like even in Lovable, they're click to edit. You click and make your changes, and it writes a conversational prompt for those changes to be made. Whereas, like having access to actually click into it and not have to do everything by typing it out and explaining it, I think is powerful.
We got another great idea. Make it shorter somehow, so less scrolling on the phone. That's a great one. So it created this image.
Oh.
That's not bad. I mean, like it knows it's called the sunrise paddle. I didn't give it explicit direction, so it was like, okay, I guess I'll put it on a sunrise background.
But it's interesting too, because it even like shifted the angle of it to kind of give it like this more magnificent,
And like this is a core thing about the benefit of humans and like the thing that makes us human and makes humanity so valuable, even as these tools are getting so much smarter and better, is
Mhm.
the thing that you'll see over and over again is it creates 80% content, stuff
Mhm.
that is generally generally pretty good, but not stuff that really like hits you as a person.
Mhm.
And that's where we come in. We are responsible for taste, for understanding the nuances of written language, of imagery, of video, of voice that these models just can't and maybe never will, because they're not actual people that interact with other people. So in this case, like, I'm unhappy with this image and there's stuff that I would do to change it, because I am a person who knows what the world actually is and can feel and actually think. And so I would go back and forth and use my taste to iterate on it to make it better and better. But it did make a bunch of changes. It made the text color change, and it also focused in on a smaller amount of
Mhm.
benefits to reduce the length of the email.
And
So
simplified your footer too. It's like, it's also given a more direct action where it's really just about learning about the paddle and not taking, alternative paths off the email.
yeah, and we could go on and on with this forever and ever if we like, but we're going to wrap it up and jump into the mailbag.
Let's do it.